Welcome to our final class of the semester, Class 21, for Hebrew 1 and 2, Bright Old Testament 502-504. Tonight we will be discussing the final Hebrew stem, the Hithpael. Here is the complete paradigm for the Hithpael strong perfect verb. We start with hith at the beginning of each verb, he plus hirik plus tav plus a silent shva. We say hith with a th because there is no dagesh line in the tav to give it a hit sound. However, throughout this class we have not differentiated between the hard and soft pronunciations of tav, so we can simply call this the Hithpael as well. We then have a pa'el at the end, where we have a patak under the first root letter, a dagesh in the second root letter, and a seire under the second root letter, pa'el. So we have a combination of what looks like a pl plus the hith, thus Hithpael. The Hithpael strong imperfect is just like the perfect, except that we have imperfect endings instead of perfect endings, and imperfect prefixes instead of no prefixes in the perfect. But other than that, we still have the it, although the he has dropped, and the pa'el part with the patak under the first root letter, a dagesh into the second root letter, and a seire under the second root letter. Here is the imperative in the Hithpael. As you will notice, the imperative is exactly the same as the 3ms perfect verb, Hithpael, or here, Hithkatel. Although you will notice that in the 2fs, the 2mp, and the 2fp, because the imperative is based off of the imperfect, we have imperfect endings at the end of the verb, thus differentiating them from the conjugation of the perfect verb. It's only the 2ms and the 3ms that are the same between the imperative and the perfect. Just to make life even more fun, the infinitive construct and the infinitive absolute in the Hithpael are exactly the same, and as you will notice, they are exactly the same as the 2ms imperative and the 3ms perfect. This means that when we see this particular verb, we will have to use context to determine exactly what form of the verb is being used. The participle is exactly like all the other forms of the Hithpael, although once again we have dropped the he and add the mem prefix for the participle, thus differentiating it from other forms of the verb. Here then is our complete list of participle preformatives. Nun in the nifal, mem with a vocal shva in the pl and pual, mem with a patak in the hifil, mem with a kibbutz in the hafal, or with a kametz hatuf, and mit, mem with a hirik followed by tav and a silent shva in the Hithpael. Here is the complete paradigm for the Hithpael strong stem. Again, you will notice that the Hithpael perfect 3ms, the imperative 2ms, the infinitive construct, and the infinitive absolute are all the same, as well as the Hithpael perfect 3cp being the same as the Hithpael imperative second masculine plural. This may make it confusing, but it means that it will be easily identified what stem we're in, and then we will just have to determine based on context what is the best form of the verb. One of the oddities of the Hithpael is that the tav in the prefix will oftentimes switch places with sibilants, those letters that start with a s sound, samek, sin, shin, and tzadeh. In the case of shin, some people have suggested that there was an original hishtafel form, and that what we're seeing is that archaic form coming back. That may be true, but it's hard to prove. Here, you will also notice that tzadeh not only changes places with the tav, but the tav actually becomes a tate. And you can see it here, hit tzadek instead of hit zadek. In the instances with a sin and a samek, the sin and the samek have simply switched places with the tav, so that instead of hit sater, we have his tater, and instead of hit saker, we have his taker. It's just an oddity of the Hithpael, but again, it becomes very obvious that we're dealing with a Hithpael because one of the root letters has actually moved. The other oddity is that when the first root letter of a verb has a T derivative, such as Zion, Dalet, Tate, or Tav, all letters that are somewhat historically tied to a T sound, the Tav of the prefix will actually assimilate into the first consonant, combining with that first root letter and becoming a dagesh forte. There are only two types of weak verbs that are affected in the Hithpael stem. One of them is the geminate. The nice thing about geminates in the Hithpael is that the second letter will always reproduce itself as the third letter, so that instead of just having a two-consonant stem, we end up with the fully written three-consonant stem. So instead of sav, from savav, we have savev, where both of the baits of the root samic bait have appeared. That way we always know what root we're dealing with in the Hithpael. The other is third hey verbs, which are also convenient because not only do we already know that this is a Hithpael, the hey indicates what form we have. Remember, all of the forms in the Hithpael look almost like one another, so the third hey actually here serves to differentiate between the forms, giving us a diagnostic to indicate what form of the verb we're actually translating. Again, as a repetition, here are the third hey diagnostics. Keeping in mind, you're going to see this chart in every single stem we cover. Perfect always ends in comets hey. Imperfect always ends in segol hey. Imperative always ends in sere hey. Infinitive construct always ends in holum vav tav. And the participle always ends in segol hey. Here is the complete diagnostic of the Hithpael verb stem. We have our strong verbs, our geminates, where the second letter has reproduced itself as the third heys, where the hey and its vowel serves to differentiate what particular form we're in, gutturals, where, as we have seen, gutturals refuse to take a dagesh forte, and will either implicitly take the dagesh forte with implicit doubling, or will refuse the dagesh forte, as in the case of resh, thereby lengthening the patak under the first root letter to a comets. Well, this is it, the end of your final Hebrew lesson for Hebrew 1 and 2. I almost want to take a moment of silence to commemorate this special moment. Okay, so do your Quizlet to solidify the content. Make sure that you understand before you come to class. Make sure that you are ready for your final exam that is coming up in just a few days, and I will see you in class.